This video is the second part of my visit at the Atarraya facility in Indianapolis, where they grow fresh shrimp in high-tech shipping containers. In the last video we've done a full tour of the farm with Thomas, so today we'll talk to Nathan about the business side of this operation.
My name is Nathan Brickman. I'm the sales manager here, so my main responsibility is finding US production partners is the main focus. We're open to supporting international partners as well, and we've had a lot of international interest. But we do have a stronger emphasis on finding production partners here in the US. So that would be supplying our hardware and software technology, hardware being the shrimp box containers, as well as the software operating platform, which I think you learned about a bit. Software operating platform is monitoring all the internal parameters of the tank and a lot of the data that's collected throughout the life cycle and production process of shrimp. And sent to a platform, so the shrimp box farm manager and owner essentially can review that platform and understand, what production inventory that they have, what are the daily tasks that they would assign to operators to manage the production and manage the farm day to day. So it's kind of a plug and play model. So it's meant for people that aren't necessarily or don't necessarily have a background in shrimp production can get into it very easily. A lot of the reason being because you don't have to necessarily be an expert on production. Part of the partnership process is that we'll train those individuals at our site, but also, we have, and they will be supported by our team remotely and the software platform that's constantly monitoring, their production and assigning tasks for them daily to maintain equilibrium in the tank and successful and efficient production.
So how labor intensive is the farm so that you offer, or what's your ideal customer so that he can manage to operate this farm?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something we're learning more about as we, really start to come out of research and development and start to support initial partners. So initially, one of the customer segments that we were targeting to approach is people that are used to contract farming or production agriculture. So that's one of the reasons we're here in Indianapolis, because a lot of the farmers and growers here have been maybe multi-generational producers and have contracted with various companies that supply them, equipment for a production model, maybe in chicken or hog farming. Assuming that, I guess when we're addressing animal protein, because this is an animal protein, shrimp, obviously. There's other kind of production models and grower models in like corn and soybean, for example. But we really tried to model off of what some of the other animal protein producers and companies that supply them have done here. So that is a customer segment of ours for sure. But also
that's cool, because I was thinking about like who should buy this and I never thought of actual farmers. I thought it was more for like people that want to start farming. And also in the comments on videos about your farm, there is a lot of people that say like, oh, I want to start farming shrimp and stuff. And so I never thought of that your customer segment is actual farmers that are used to this kind of business model. It's an interesting realization, but I guess so for them what this is, it's kind of a diversified agribusiness investment. So it's like, okay, like maybe they've been farming chicken for some time. That industry is extremely well established now, and it is competitive, and the margins that the farmer gets now is not quite the return that they had in the nascency of the industry, at least in the US. I'm not as knowledgeable with some of the international markets, but depends on if you farm them also for meat or eggs.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true too.
But I have one friend that farms chicken for, basically he's just like breeder. So there is this company that I guess gives his family chicken, and they are just like breeder chicken. So they are not for meat, not for eggs, but for the chicken that will then breed eggs and meat.
Interesting.
So,
so, and my friend, for this chicken gets paid much more per bird than you would get if you would sell them for meat or stuff.
Yeah.
So there is, but if you farm them just for meat and just for eggs, also depends on if you had everything dialed down. My other friend that farms chicken for eggs, his operation is quite solid, so they make a solid profit off of that.
Right.
But just depends on the farmer and the operation and what you farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's natural in any well-established industry. Is like people have like niches, right? Yeah. So I guess our niche, when you think about it, I mean, it kind of depends on the audience that we're talking about. Yeah. One of which is that these are movable assets being
I mean, it's a shipping container,
and they can be in a vast variety of places. Yeah. So I guess to add on to the answer of the previous question was definitely we're targeting people that are already farming that might want to consider an alternative production. However, I mean, really, like, we provide the technology. I think people are going to get so creative with this. So someone who's just maybe they're like a commercial real estate investor and they have physical space, maybe even warehousing space that's sitting empty, or parking lot space that's sitting empty. And if they want to kind of be part of the future of food and the future of protein and provide a sustainable local protein source, like, we might see these shrimp box farm operations pop up in just, like parking lot corners outside of a mall or something like that. So I would say, definitely people in production agriculture. I would just say investors normally, because our vision is to establish a new industry in the US. So we consume a ton of seafood and we consume a lot of shrimp.
I would assume.
Yeah, and I think your video covered this a lot. Just overall kind of market conditions.
Yeah, they are not that good.
They're not that good, and here in the U.S., probably a bit similar to most like Western European countries, we don't have large-scale commercial production. Yeah, so I guess when we look at, and the reason the back of our shirts say what they do.
What they say?
Making shrimp the future of protein.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the reasons is that we want to, like, our vision is to establish an industry or help establish an industry here in the U.S. for large-scale commercial shrimp farming domestically. Yeah. We consume a ton of shrimp, as probably you do too. We consume almost 2 billion pounds of shrimp per year, but like 90% of it is imported. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And there is a couple of questions I want to ask about that.
Yeah.
So there is like they are catching shrimp in the south of the country, and so what percentage of the market is that?
Yeah.
And also I've read some, well, I guess YouTube comments that how much are you competing with them or out-competing the shrimp farmers in the south?
Yeah. So I mean, right now, the shrimp that we consume all over the world either comes from two places. It comes from the ocean and it's fished, or it comes from farms and it's farmed.
Yeah.
More so recently, and in the current state, wild-caught shrimp is about 30% of the US market. Mm-hmm. So already the majority of what we're consuming and the majority of what's in the seafood or grocery stores or in the seafood counter of grocery stores is farmed.
I was just in a Whole Foods today in downtown, and
what'd you learn?
Yeah, and I was looking at shrimp, and farmed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so for us, like, one of the novelties of this is to have farms that are closer to the source of the consumers, because a lot of the, there's a ton of different consumer food movements, but one of which is definitely local. So that's one of the things that we want to be able to provide is, like, so farmers here, or it doesn't have to be farmers, or someone that's just maybe an entrepreneur and wants to establish a new business venture can, sell local shrimp. Either on a smaller scale, so I think Thomas explained, but a minimum operation is 20 shrimp boxes.
For it to be profitable?
Yeah, for it to be profitable, but also for us to stagger the grow out period so that the producer partner or the owner of the shrimp box farm.
So that is like consistent production.
Consistent both production and harvest. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that would be, that's a robust operation because,
it's not like you can do this just in a small backyard. It takes a little bit more real estate. But when we're looking at more of like a commercial scale, we would be thinking more of around like 100 boxes. So a lot larger.
And so what size is this warehouse?
I don't know the exact dimensions of this warehouse, actually.
And I assume this isn't the full capacity, so So what do you reckon, how many containers could be fit in this size of a warehouse?
In this, I think it was closer, maybe between 24 and 30 on a single layer. Like obviously,
like this.
They're not stacked right now. So
what's the plans for the stacked farm?
Our design and engineering teams are playing around with the possibility of stacking the containers. Yeah.
And where is that supposed to be? Is it for this warehouse or is it just a separate location?
We have enough ceiling space here to do it, but we want to make sure the boxes can support it because some of the challenges is weight. But that would allow us to even have like a more efficient use of space. I mean, right now it's already really efficient just because we have two tanks within the containers, but
1,500 square meters.
Is the warehouse.
1,500?
Yes. Okay. Or 16,000 square feet.
Okay, thanks for the conversion.
Yeah.
What are the overhead costs of the container, or when you have 20 of them?
Yeah. So when considering like a production partner, buying our technology, partnering with us to establish their own production, the main costs are water, which is pretty negligible. It is people have water costs, but it's decently negligible just because we can recirculate our water between grow out. So water, electricity.
Recirculate 100% or?
It's a zero water discharge. So we don't have like water pollutants in a system. Okay. So we can reuse the water from like harvest and production cycle over and over. So I guess there's a little bit of a water startup cost, but after we have water in the system, it can last quite some time. Okay. In addition to that is electricity, a lot of which is to power the data sensors in the containers and the pumps, and then some heating costs to heat the water, and like labor on the farm. So minimum farm of 20 boxes requires 4 full-time employees, and then 1 kind of farm manager to oversee the operation. And then in addition to like kind of what I would consider like utility costs, after that, the other costs are, all the inputs that are necessary to produce the shrimp, most of which we supply. So in taking on a partner, so if you were to establish partner with us and you're like, hey, I want to get into shrimp farming, the continuous partnership is that we, in addition to the software platform and the remote support, is we provide with the feed, the larva, and the probiotic. So the feed, for obviously feeding the shrimp, the larva, which are the small PLs to start the grow out, and that would be starting in the nursery tank and then distributing and seeding the various containers to have full production. And then the probiotic is the inputs for the biofloc, which is the nature of the water.
So there's one point where I've read many people having problems with this sort of business model, that you supply everything the partner then uses, and that the partner basically can't use his own sources. How would you address that?
I mean, it's a good question. Other people have asked similar things. We know the production data and the economic data from the inputs that we've tested with and have used for so long. So that's, I guess, one of the main reasons why you'll have the most efficient production, and we know this model based on these inputs that we supply. We're definitely open to testing other feed sources and other inputs. I mean, even when we are supporting production partners in the market, we're going to constantly be iterating both the hardware technology and the production process as well as the software. That's kind of like our ability to constantly innovate the system, just as any innovative company does. So I think we'll probably test different feed sources and maybe eventually even offer different
possibilities to the partners. But right now we've learned this model. We've learned the strain of the shrimp that is most efficient in these systems and the inputs according. So that's what we've settled upon as we have the opportunity to take on many partners fast to start building up this industry rapidly.
Okay.
Yeah.
How big of a cost is the energy to run this farm?
Yeah. So it kind of depends on the location and the resources, the location that you're in and the resources that you have. Sometimes the kind of energy costs are the main cost driver in the business model, or like the highest expense.
Yep.
But that's, I don't know if this is answering your question, but what we've started to learn is depending on people's resources, if they have like excess heat, for example, or maybe a renewable energy source, these can become really interesting projects where people are finding alternative ways to power the farm with, solar, for example, or, excess heat that they're capturing to already heat the water. Because when looking at the production economics, really, it's if you can reduce some of those, heating or electricity operating costs, it can become even more of like a economically interesting endeavor. Yeah.
And with the methane, can you then use it to elevate all the energy costs, or is it like 50%, 20%?
That might be like part of the vision. I think right now that would pose more of a challenge, not something that would be ready to support quite yet.
Yeah.
But eventually, maybe. I don't know. That'd be a tough one to answer.
They have 5 of those biodigester bags in Mexico, and they produce a lot of methane.
Yeah?
I think they're fully, they have all their energy needs out there.
Really?
To then power the farm. Yeah.
What's the final product selling price?
Yeah.
Well, so you were talking that you are selling today the shrimp at the farmer's market. So what's the price there?
Yeah. So I guess when considering like what are we selling, we sell the production technology, the shrimp box and the Atarraya technology, and then we sell the shrimp. From this farm in Indianapolis, we sell our shrimp at a variety of locations. The number one restaurant, apparently, the number one restaurant in the country, which is based in New York, they are buying and serving our shrimp.
Can you say the name of the
restaurant? I think so. We sell our shrimp in a number of different places. We're in restaurants in Washington, D.C., some in Chicago with the Jaleo group, which is the chef Jose Andres group. And then we're also in what's supposedly the number one restaurant in the country based in New York, which is called Atomics.
Okay.
And yeah, so we are selling the Agua Blanca seafood shrimp product that comes out of this production model in a variety of locations, and consistently building that brand and that market presence, being really fresh, never frozen shrimp and local, and in one of the most, if not the most sustainable agricultural system for shrimp in the world. And then also, we're selling this technology too. So to answer your question, the price of the shrimp, the price of the Agua Blanca shrimp varies a little bit per based on the size of the shrimp and how we package it and process it. So and the markets that we're selling to. So that varies. For the production technology, so for somebody else to invest in this business model and establish a shrimp farm, the shrimp boxes are $52,000 per container. So a minimum viable farm is just a tiny bit over $1 million investment. But most of the financial models that we're running based on the input costs that's required to operate the system are yielding or are showing between maybe a 20 and 24% return on investment. Again, it depends on
per year?
Total.
Total.
Yeah. So that would be like, considering your yearly operating costs and some of the recurring costs of the software and the inputs. So it'd be, kind of depends on your resources and your location, but short of a 5-year break even, and then cash flow positive after that. And that would just be with the minimum farm of 20 boxes. Our our model becomes even much more attractive for somebody that wants to start with a minimum and scale, or just wants to grow, to start off with like a 50 or 100 container farm. Yeah.
Do you have, for example, comparison? Because like now that you mentioned 1 million, like when you want to build, for example, a new hog barn, it can be right about 1 million. So do you have some comparison between the two business models, for example?
Yeah, super good question. Super good question. And we do. I mean, obviously it's like a lot of money, but we, you know, it's a business. So people are investing in establishing a business that will have a return. And so, yeah, to answer your question, like in considering like the startup costs of this operation, we did look at other industries and wanted to make sure that our barrier of entry was accessible to people to invest in this business as it would be in other agricultural businesses.
Where do you get your energy from for this specific operation?
Just from the warehouse.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
In case the power ever goes out, we have a backup generator.
Yeah. How big is the weekly harvest?
Yeah. So I mean, that's, I guess, talking about kind of what, like how much we can produce out of a farm.
Yeah.
So in a full scale operation in 20 shrimp boxes, we're expecting that you can produce between 70 and 75,000 pounds of shrimp per year.
Okay.
So when looking at it on a per box basis, it's about 3,300 to 3,500 pounds per year per shrimp box. And again, shrimp box has 2 containers.
Yep.
And so on a weekly basis, I think it comes out to
It depends on when they're ready.
400 or 500 pounds a week.
Yeah. Some of the tanks have like 100 or 150 pounds of shrimp in them.
Yeah.
And so just like whenever they're ready at the right size, and we can take them out. So we can harvest them. I mean, it depends on when we're ready, and whenever we want to sell them, we can harvest them.
Yeah.
Just after the grow out period.
Here we talk about the pricing of the shrimp, but it turned out to be kind of confusing, so Nathan provided me with this slick chart of their current market prices. The numbers in the size column refer to how many shrimp make up a pound, so the smaller the number, the bigger the shrimp.
Yeah. We have like a online direct-to-consumer portal through Agua Blanca Seafood.
And also, by not using, so you just don't pour any chemicals into there, I assume.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but
there's no unnecessary additives.
Let me rephrase the question.
Yeah.
Because everything's chemicals. But
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like,
yeah. So you don't use no funny stuff and no antibiotics in there. Yeah, so just feed, lime, and sugar.
Yeah. How I imagine it is the most progressive cattle ranchers now that are aiming to build regenerative cattle ranches where they can sequester carbon from the atmosphere into their land. A lot of them are starting to view themselves as grass farmers to manage the annual and perennial grains on their pasture land and kind of have like an approach of rangeland management.
Yeah.
So like in this system, in a way, like it's kind of funny to say, but like I think it makes a little bit of sense because we're using biofloc. Like we're kind of like microbiologists that are focused on creating the probiotic culture, and we happen to produce shrimp out of that. So our intention is to replicate their natural habitat and ocean environment, both in terms of like movement of the water and also like composition of the water through biofloc, which is also a feed source for them, for the shrimp, in addition to the feed that we supply. Yeah, so it's that's like, it's almost like shrimp in a kombucha environment in the shrimp boxes. So that's kind of a funny way to look at it, is like a lot of the work that we're doing is to maintain the probiotic homeostasis to produce shrimp, kind of similar to what regenerative cattle ranchers are doing, which is like more rangeland and pasture management to produce the healthiest cattle and sequester as much carbon throughout that process as possible.
So what's the big vision then?
Yeah.
The big vision is to build an industry with the technology. So that would take shape in finding production partners to invest in this technology alongside of us, to produce alongside of us, and to start to capture a lot of the U.S. market that's pretty untapped for like local and domestic production. So I think it's like if we deploy 55,000 containers, it's only a small percentage of the market. It's that big. So for people the opportunity for people to get into this business and get into it early is pretty immense, because them partnering with us and figuring out like how to operate these farms really well, they can grow them. So it's kind of like an opportunity for those that got into like the poultry industry, for example, in like the 50s or 60s. A lot of them did exceptionally well because the industry was just young at that point. And so our long-term vision is the same, is to continuously innovate the technology that we have, but also bring on and support production partners and create a really well-known consumer brand where people know and trust this technology, know and trust the people that are producing alongside of us, and love the final product and love the shrimp at the end of the day. I mean, that's what the beauty is, and why we do this is because we know, and many people love shrimp. So yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, but thanks a ton. I mean,
thank you.